Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 415 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. There's a number of teams to start the baseball season that I thought were going to be playoff teams. The Red Sox, Phillies, and Mets that all got off to terrible starts. And like the Red Sox, the Phillies responded by firing their manager, Rob Thompson, and naming Don Mattingly as manager. And you can call it a small sample size, but things are getting right back on track. As I record this, the team has an 11-3 record since making that switch at manager. And if there's one player who's responsible, that player would be Kyle Schwarber, who in those 14 games has 9 home runs, including currently hitting one in 5 games in a row, 13 RBIs, and maybe most surprisingly, a .291 batting average. So here are my thoughts on this. Is this a team that is really bouncing back because they fired the manager? Or was this a team that was always going to get back on track because they have proven talent like Kyle Schwarber, who was a legitimate MVP candidate just last season? No matter what the reason is it's hard to argue the results. The Phillies are playing like the Philadelphia Phillies of the last few years. The biggest reason I wanted to talk about this specific baseball team is I really do think they are the only of the 3 teams I mentioned that are going to make the playoffs. I don't see the Mets and Red Sox overcoming their issues as baseball teams and overcome their horrendous starts. The Phillies, I think, are going to make the playoffs. The big question here is, are the Philadelphia Phillies legitimate World Series contenders? Can they compete with the likes of the LA Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves in the National League? Because you look at the roster the Phillies have, and they should absolutely be in win-now mode. They are a veteran-laden team. You have Kyle Schwarber. You have Bryce Harper. You have Trey Turner. You have Zach Wheeler. You have Aaron Nola. These are not young stars. This Phillies team is about the here and the now. And if they don't become a team that you look at and go, yes, they are a legitimate contender, then things need to change this roster drastically in the coming offseason. This is a big year for the Philadelphia Phillies. This past offseason, they made the right move. They committed long-term to Kyle Schwarber, but who else on the roster should they really be committing to in the long term? I know the big question is about Bryce Harper, and Dave Dombrowski said he wasn't elite last season. I mean, do the Phillies have a long-term future with Bryce Harper as the face of their franchise? The Phillies did not have a good offseason, in my opinion. It was all about bringing back Kyle Schwarber, trying to mend your relationship with Bryce Harper. The Nicholas Castellanos thing became a distraction. They should have been in on the big names. Kyle Tucker would have made more sense for the Philadelphia Phillies than he does for the LA Dodgers. I know the Phillies had an agreement with Bo Bichette, and then he ended up on the New York Mets. That is a loss. He would have been a good addition to the team. But just bringing back Kyle Schwarber and your catcher JT Realmuto was not a good enough offseason for Dave Dombrowski, a guy who I think of as a big spender. And because of that, I think Dombrowski needs to make a drastic move at the trade deadline. And for example, I'll talk about the kind of move he should be looking to make. I mean, the Minnesota Twins are going nowhere fast, yet they have one of the best offensive outfielders in the game right now, Byron Buxton. He makes a whole lot of sense for the Philadelphia Phillies. He is the type of guy who you can compete with in the here and now, and he can help you in the future. I mean, he is still a guy who is in his prime. My issue with the Philadelphia Phillies lineup the last few years is that they are so top heavy. You have the Bryce Harpers, you have the Kyle Schwarbers, you have Trey Turner, but then after that, I know know guys like Brandon Marsh are emerging. Alec Boehm has had a terrible start to this season. He's not as bad as he's playing, but still, you're not as deep as the Atlanta Braves, and you're nowhere nearly as deep as the LA Dodgers. That's why those two teams are the best in the National League right now, because they have more than just their stars. I mean, the Dodgers have been without Mookie Betts for the majority of this season, yet they are still winning baseball games. The Philadelphia Phillies are a team that heavily relies on their star players, and at this moment, they are relying solely on Kyle Schwarber. That needs to change for me to think of them as a World Series contending team. I believe in them as a good baseball team. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but to get back to a World Series where they were a few years ago, the roster needs to change. And we all know the guy on the roster who needs to win the World Series most of all, and that would be Bryce Harper. I mean, he is one of the biggest names in the sport other than Mike Trout and Aaron Judge, who have yet to win a World Series title. Even the biggest Bryce Harper detractors can't argue that the only thing holding him back from truly being one of the all-time greats is winning the World Series. I mean, he's done everything else in the game. He's been to the All-Star games. He's won an MVP. And I am someone who really thinks that this marriage between Harper and the Phillies has really worked out for both sides. I mean, he is the star that they needed. The Phillies were in a rough place before Bryce Harper's arrival, but now here we are. There are expectations for this team to be really good, and they weren't at the start of this season. They're now turning things around, but as they turn things around, I think the expectations are going to rise once again. And are they going to be able to reach those expectations? Pitching for this team is always up and down. You have the two horses at the front of this rotation, and Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez. You know what you're going to get out of them on most nights. Zach Wheeler is recovering from injury, but he seems to be getting back to his old self. Sanchez is the guy who you paid a lot of money to. You basically picked him over Ranger Suarez. I want to look at the big picture for a minute, because I think when people talk about the National League, they think the most interesting division is the NL West, because you have the Dodgers, you have the Padres, you have the Giants, and you have the Diamondbacks. But for me, I think the most interesting division in the National League is the NL East, because I think coming into this year, there were 3 teams that believed they were in win a World Series right now mode, and those 3 teams are the Philadelphia Phillies, the Atlanta Braves, and the New York Mets. And one of those teams is seemingly nowhere close to winning a World Series, and that's the New York Mets. Meanwhile, the Braves are closer than many people expected them to be. I kind of saw it. I said on this podcast, I thought the Braves were really going to show people wrong, and I liked what they did this offseason to improve on their already talented roster. I think the Braves did what the Phillies should have done this offseason. Improve around the margins, and that is something that Dave Dombrowski is not really interested in doing. He is interested in making the big splash moves, but doesn't seem as interested in building the middle of the roster, the role players that teams rely on to win World Series titles. Whereas the Braves made moves like bringing in Marcio Dubon and Mike Yastrzemski. I mean, these are not stars. These are not guys that get a lot of attention, but they are the right roster fits for the Atlanta Braves. I think it's clear what the Phillies need moving forward. They need a third power bat to go along with Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, because some of the guys they were relying on to be that power bat haven't brought the power. Adolis Garcia has 4 homers on the season, and Alec Boehm only has 3. Maybe those guys internally are about to surge and become the power hitters you expect. I just think the the Phillies need another big bat. They're going to have to make a trade at this trade deadline and get the bat they should have brought in during the offseason. Like I said earlier, Byron Buxton makes a whole lot of sense. Jorge Soler, if the Angels continue to falter, makes sense. Just a guy who you can put in the lineup and can guarantee that every few nights he's going to hit a home run. I do want to get into a little bit more of them firing Rob Thomson, because it's weird, because if you remember, Rob Thomson was named the manager after they fired Joe Girardi. This is probably why Dave Dombrowski made the move, because he saw how a team can have success after letting go of a manager. So he lets go of Rob Thomson and brings in a baseball legend in Don Mattingly, a guy who should be a no doubt Hall of Fame player. I mean, he is the best Yankee to not win a World Series not named Aaron Judge. And I don't really know the consensus about how people feel about Don Mattingly as a manager. He was the manager of the Dodgers back when they were just making the playoffs. They had guys like Matt Kemp. They were a good baseball team. But then in comes Dave Roberts and they become a dynasty. And then he manages the Marlins when they were in a weird situation with Derek Jeter running the team. I mean, we all know that was never going to work out. So this is what has happened to both of those teams that fired their manager earlier on this season. The Red Sox, the team that I root for, have basically become a 500 team. Meanwhile, the Phillies have become the team we all expected them to be. And I think the difference between the two teams is the Phillies have offensive firepower. They have Kyle Schwarber, a guy who can have a hot bat and carry a team for a month-long stretch. I also think that's probably the difference between changing your manager with a veteran roster and changing your manager with a young roster. The veteran roster knows how to react to the situation. They know that this now means it's put up or shut up time. They know the severity of the moment. A lot of those guys were on the roster when Joe Girardi lost his job and Rob Thomson walked in, and they made it all the way to the World Series. They have all been on winning baseball teams before. That is why I am not surprised that of those three teams that have got off to a bad start, that they are the ones getting back on track, because they know how long a baseball season can be. They know you're going to go through rough stretches, and they know how to react when a front office makes that extreme move of firing your manager. In all likelihood, Kyle Schwarber was going to at some point play like the Kyle Schwarber of last year anyway, but one could argue it's coming right now because of them letting go of Rob Thomson. Both of these teams, the Phillies and Red Sox, made changes at the manager position because they believe in the rosters they have assembled. I think the difference here is the Phillies are right in that they have the right roster. They should be way better than what they've been earlier on in the season. They should be the type of team that goes 11-3 during a 14-game stretch, and they should continue to play like that kind of team. Dave Dombrowski was right in that the Phillies have a season worth salvaging. I mean, they have Bryce Harper, you have Kyle Schwarber, you have Zach Wheeler, you have all of the ingredients of a team that on paper should be competing to win a World Series title. Them making that move made sense to me. Why I don't think the Mets or the Red Sox are going to get back on track is because this past offseason, they lost a major star, both of those teams. The Mets lost Pete Alonso. The Red Sox lost Alex Bregman. The Phillies didn't really lose anybody. They let Nicholas Castellanos go because he was annoying them. That's the obvious difference. There was no real reason why the Phillies were not playing up to their potential, so they needed to make the move. And they drastically needed to get to a point where we were just talking about baseball, because I think a lot of the coverage about the Phillies over the last few months have been about Dombrowski saying that Harper is no longer elite, or the Nicholas Castellanos controversy. Like, nobody was fixated on the actual baseball team. And some of that has to do with the fact that they did not make a major move this offseason. Now they are in prime position to make a playoff run, Dombrowski should be looking to improve the team. It should all be about the baseball team. You're 11-3. Don Mattingly should be the manager for the rest of the season. I expect, and I would be shocked if at this point the Phillies did not become one of the wild card teams. Do I think they're going to chase down the Atlanta Braves? No, I do not. I think the Braves are the far better roster. But there are good teams in the National League that I think the Phillies are way better than. I think the Phillies, I take them way more seriously than I do, say, the Cincinnati Reds or the San Diego Padres. It's insane that right now the St. Louis Cardinals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Cincinnati Reds, the bottom three teams in the NL Central, all have a better record than the Philadelphia Phillies. That should not be the case, and I don't think that's going to be the case come season's end. Right now, Kyle Schwarber is carrying the team. Bryce Harper is going to get going even more. Trey Turner has yet to have the type of season you expect from a guy like Trey Turner. So I really am conflicted about this team because I think they should be getting praise for their play currently. I mean, 11-3 in 14 games. They are getting back on track. But are they going to become that team we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season? Yes, it would be a great story for the Phillies to salvage their year and make the postseason, but expectations should really be about them winning the World Series. I mean, you look at their roster and you go, yes, you have enough talent to win it all. You have Kyle Schwarber, one of the best sluggers in the sport. You have Bryce Harper, one of the best athletes in the sport, yet to win a World Series. You have enough pitching. You have a really good bullpen with Duran as your closer. I do think it's tough to judge these other teams in the National League against the LA Dodgers because the Dodgers seemingly have everything. They have Shohei Ohtani, they have Freddie Freeman, and they've won 2 World Series in a row. So yes, you can say that this is like the 90s in the NBA. When a team loses to Michael Jordan's Bulls, you can go, yeah, well, he faced the greatest of all time. What do you expect? I don't feel that way about this Phillies team. You need to win a World Series or drastic changes need to be made. Getting to, let's call it the wild card round and getting eliminated early would not be enough for the Philadelphia Phillies. I expect more. That's why I'm not surprised that they're getting back on track, that they're playing up to their potential right now, and I expect them to continue to do so. Because I just don't know how many more chances you're going to get with this current iteration of the roster. Bryce Harper's not getting any younger. Kyle Schwarber's not getting younger. Zach Wheeler especially is not getting younger. You need to take advantage of the great seasons these players are giving you. It would be a real shame for the Phillies to not win a World Series during this era of Phillies baseball. That's why I think they're the team in the National League that weirdly has the most pressure on them to win now. There's no pressure on the Dodgers. They've won 2 World Series in a row. They have cash money. They're going to continue to be an excellent baseball team. The window for this version of the Philadelphia Phillies is dwindling fast. I honestly believe that the Red Sox fired Alex Cora because they were concerned about the future of their baseball team, and the Phillies fired Rob Thompson because they are concerned about the here and now. And they've been proven right in a sense that they've gone 11-3 since making the move. That's great, but it's not enough. You've got to keep going. Dombrowski needs to make a big splash kind of trade, and then I think people will start to consider the Phillies to be a legitimate contending baseball team once again. I want to end the podcast talking a little bit more about Kyle Schwarber. I think there's a real chance he gets to 500 career home runs. Currently, he's at 357. In 6 years with the Chicago Cubs, he hit 121 home runs. In 5 years with the Philadelphia Phillies, he's hit 204. Last year, of course, he had 56 home runs. He's already got a major league leading 17 home runs this season. But currently he has a .231 career batting average, which far and away would be the lowest career batting average for any position player in the history of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Schwarber is really going to test the theory of if you hit 500 home runs, we are going to put you in the Hall of Fame if there's no evidence of PED use. I'm betting he gets to 500 home runs. He doesn't feel like a guy who's slowing down anytime soon. There are a number of 50 home run seasons and 40 home run seasons to go for one Kyle Schwarber. The biggest reason the Philadelphia Phillies are currently turning their season around. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every week on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.